Let us now look at SDG 5, gender equality. The underlying principle for this SDG is to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. I think we're all aware that the situation is pretty unequal, and it would take another 40 years for women and men to be equally represented in national political leadership at the current pace. You can see that while improvements are being made, there was 22.4% of females in national parliaments in 2015, and that has risen only to 26.2% by 2022. So there's a lot of work to be done there if we want to get equality. Gender responsive budgeting needs to be strengthened. There needs to be more money invested in this. The proportion of countries with systems to track gender budget allocations, if we look at the overview there, only 26% have comprehensive systems in place, 59% have some features, and 15% are lacking the minimum elements of such a system. While women accounted for 39% of total employment, they accounted for 45% of global employment losses in 2020. More than 1 in 4 women of 15 years or over have been subjected to intimate partner violence. That's 641 million people at least once in their lifetime. Only 57% of women between 15 and 49 are making their own informed decisions on sex and reproductive health care. That's based on a 64-country study from 2007 to 2021. There are some quite disturbing statistics in this particular SDG. So, in this SDG, there are 9 targets. So, target 5.1, fairly clear, very clear, in fact. End all forms of discrimination against all women and girls everywhere. So, globally, women and girls face discrimination on many levels. Women and girls face unacceptably high levels of violence rooted in gender inequality and are at grave risk of harmful practices such as female genital mutilation and child and early and forced marriage. WHO figures show that about 1 in 3 women worldwide have experienced physical and/or sexual abuse. Target 5.2. Eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls in the public and private spheres, including trafficking and sexual and other types of exploitation. Estimating the prevalence of trafficking is difficult due to the low numbers of identified victims each year. 20,532 registered victims of trafficking were recorded in the EU in 2015 and 2016. Over 20,000. 68% of those victims were women. Sexual exploitation is the most common form of exploitation. Trafficking is a crime that is evident in Ireland, and the number involved are likely to be significantly higher than the number reported. The vast majority of incidents of human trafficking reported in Ireland relates to sexual exploitation. Target 5.3. Eliminate all harmful practices such as child and early and forced marriage and female genital mutilation. Despite being internationally recognized as a human rights violation, female genital mutilation has been performed on at least 200 million girls and women in 31 countries. Some communities endorse it as a means of controlling girls' sexuality or safeguarding their chastity, others as a prerequisite for marriage or inheritance. Every year, at least 12 million girls are married before they reach the age of 18. This is 28 girls every minute. These are pretty stark statistics. Target 5.4. Recognise and value unpaid care and domestic work through the provision of public services, infrastructure and social protection policies, and the promotion of shared responsibility within the household and the family as nationally appropriate. It's interesting if you think back to 1973, many women had to cease employment in the civil service as soon as they became married. Alongside this, the mother of a child or children was not able to collect their children's allowance. The person designated to collect the monthly payment at the time was the father. Fortunately, things have changed. But what do you think it was like for women then? And what do you think it's still like for women in those situations in countries at the moment? Target 5.5. ensure women's full and effective participation and equal opportunities for leadership at all levels of decision making in political, economic, and public life. Women's equal participation and leadership in political and public life are essential to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. However, data shows that women are underrepresented at all levels of decision making worldwide. Out of more than 190 countries in the world, only 28 have female heads of state. Target 5.6 ensure universal access to sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights as agreed in accordance with the Programme of Action of the International Conference on Population and Development and the Beijing Platform for Action and the outcome documents of their review conferences. The International Conference on Population and Development Programme of Action was remarkable in its recognition that reproductive health and rights, as well as women's empowerment and gender equality, are cornerstones of population and development programmes. Target 5A undertake reforms to give women equal rights to economic resources, as well as access to ownership and control over land and other forms of property, financial services, inheritance, and natural resources in accordance with national laws. We briefly touched on this earlier, and uh, in relation to poverty, if you do not have access to economic resources, you are going to be stuck in the poverty trap. Equal access, of course, is essential in relation to gender equality. In Irish farms, who inherits the family? It's an interesting one. Normally or traditionally has been the eldest son, and statistics seem to show that that's still sort of the case, or still predominantly the case. In 2016, females represented only 12% of farm owners in Ireland. 12%. The barriers to female land ownership are complex, comprising legal, social, and cultural barriers. Less than 20% of all landholders globally are women. Can you see an issue with this? Are there decisions? What sort of decisions need to be made to sort of balance this? And of course, there can be no gender equality without equal access to land and economic resources. Target 5B enhance the use of enabling technology, in particular ITC, information and communications technology, to promote the empowerment of women. Women around the world experience poverty at higher rates than men because of certain customs and cultural norms. In many developing countries, women are confined to traditional roles and have limited access to capital, training, and technology that could enrich their lives. Access to technology also plays a large part in cementing gender inequality, especially in developing countries. Target 5C adopt and strengthen sound policies and enforceable legislation for the promotion of gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls at all levels. I think this is quite interesting. Sound policies, obviously, and enforceable legislation. That is something we will discuss in a bit of detail as we go through the program. So there you have the 9 targets. Gender equality covers a lot of issues: forced marriages, violence, trafficking, lack of access to resources, health, land ownership, access to technology, access to education, the role of women in the home, leadership roles in general.